Let's talk about climate change. It's a huge topic, right? You hear about it constantly, but what is actually going on? Well, we're going to cut through all the noise and break down the science, the real world impact, and what we can do about it. And we're going to do it all in the next 5 minutes.
So, to kick things off, check out this quote. Our source material calls climate change the greatest global threat of this century. Wow, that is a really big statement. So let's dig in and actually unpack what's behind it.
Here's our game plan. First, we'll cover the basics. Think of it as a planet's fever. Then we'll look at Earth's natural blanket, the role we humans play, the real-world consequences, and finally, some simple ways we can all help protect the planet.
Okay, let's jump right into section 1, a planet's fever. To really get a grip on what climate change is, you have to start with the absolute basics.
You've probably heard someone say something like, "Ugh, it's freezing today. So much for global warming, huh?" Well, that's a classic mix-up between weather and climate. Weather is what's happening outside your window right now. Climate is the big picture. It's what we expect based on patterns over decades. So climate change isn't about one weirdly hot summer. It's about that whole long-term expectations starting to shift.
And that brings us to the official definition. At its core, climate change is that long-term shift in average weather patterns. And look, the Earth's climate has always changed over millions of years. But what has scientists so concerned right now is the incredible speed at which it's happening.
So, how does our planet stay warm in the first place? It's a great question. Turns out, Earth has this amazing kind of natural blanket that keeps everything, well, just right for life. Let's take a look at how that actually works. Okay, quick pop quiz. We hear greenhouse effect, and we almost always think it's a bad thing. But what do you think would happen if it just disappeared? If we had no greenhouse effect at all, what would Earth be like? Yep, it would be way too cold to live on. Basically a giant ice ball. So the natural greenhouse effect isn't just good, it is essential for life. It's like a cozy blanket trapping just the right amount of the sun's heat. The problem isn't the blanket itself. The problem is that we're making that blanket way, way too thick. And that's the big question, isn't it? What's making that blanket thicker? Well, that leads us right into the human factor and how our modern world is kind of tipping a very, very delicate natural balance. This image just nails it. It's the perfect before and after. On the left, you've got the natural process. See how some heat escapes back into space? Everything stays in balance. But now look at the right. That's the human-enhanced version. We're pumping all these extra greenhouse gases into the air, and it's like we're adding more and more layers to that blanket. It traps more heat, and the whole planet starts to warm up. So where are these extra gases coming from? Well, mostly from things we do every single day. The biggest one is burning fossil fuels. Coal, oil, and gas for our factories and cars. But it's also things like deforestation. When we chop down forests, we lose those amazing trees that naturally soak up carbon dioxide. Then you add in agriculture, urbanization, and other industrial processes. And it all adds up. And this whole process, this increase in Earth's average temperature because of that thicker blanket, yep, that has a name you've definitely heard. Global warming. It is the direct result of that enhanced greenhouse effect we were just looking at. Okay, so the planet is getting warmer. So what? Why does that matter to you and me? Well, let's get into the real-world consequences because this is where it really starts to hit home. Now, when you see a number like this, 0.74 degrees Celsius, it's easy to think, that's it? That's nothing? But think about it this way. When you get a fever, even a 1 or 2 degree rise in your body temperature means you are seriously sick. It's the same for the planet. For a massive global system, even a tiny shift in the average temperature can have huge, huge consequences. And here's what those consequences look like on a global scale. That little temperature bump leads to massive changes. We're talking about ice caps melting, which causes sea levels to rise. We're seeing more extreme weather, crazier heat waves, bigger storms, major flooding. And of course, all of this puts wildlife and entire ecosystems under an incredible amount of stress. And to bring this from a big global idea down to a local reality, just take a look at what's happening in a country like Pakistan. For people there, climate change isn't some far-off concept. It's impacting their farms, their water supply, and it's increasing the risk of really devastating floods. It's a powerful reminder of how these global trends affect real people right now. Okay, I know that all sounds pretty heavy, and it's easy to feel overwhelmed. But the story absolutely does not end there. So let's pivot and talk about solutions, because there are absolutely things we can all do to help protect our planet. So you might be thinking, what can one person really do? Well, it turns out a lot.
Our source highlights some simple but powerful actions. Plant trees, drive less, walk more, be mindful about saving water and electricity, cut down on food waste, and, of course, the classic 3 Rs: reduce, reuse, and recycle. Look, each one might feel like a tiny drop in a huge bucket, but when millions of us do them together, that is how you create a wave of change. And that really brings us to this final thought. The science is pretty clear that our collective human actions have accelerated this problem. So it really makes you wonder, right? If our collective actions got us here, doesn't that mean our collective actions also hold the power to forge a new path forward? What do you think?